But rivers weren't Weldon's only pathways.
1832, the railroad rolls in. And there was a desire by the railroad companies to take those goods from the canal. Railroad companies wanted the goods to go to Petersburg or Norfolk and vice versa, goods that could go back upriver. Weldon was just the place that it all converged.
The striking thing to me is that between 1820 and 1843, when it was incorporated as Weldon, you had a canal built, an aqueduct built, and 4 railroads built, plus a 5th spur. In 23 years, that much happened in this little place.
Trains were big business, and a big part of life in those days. The seaboard went from Raleigh to Portsmouth, and it crossed the Atlantic coastline, which was the north-south. Starting at 3rd Street was also a freight yard. There were probably 4 or 5 parallel tracks there, south 10 or 12 blocks.
Weldon became the largest railroad hub in the southeast.
Weldon to Baltimore Daily Line by the Portsmouth and Roanoke Railroad. The Roanoke Republican, March 8, 1843.
The rise of rail travel brought an influx of new residents from surrounding agricultural regions, further transforming Weldon into a thriving community.
My great-grandfather was Rufus Whitfield Daniel, and he came to Weldon from Northampton County, which is right across the Roanoke River from Weldon. And they lived in Old Elms in Weldon, and Rufus Whitfield had a store there in Weldon.
Great-grandfather was a doctor. They lived at Pierce's Crossroads. And then he decided to move into Weldon.
They came into Weldon to start businesses, and they ran farms. They were gentlemen farmers.
Weldon was a combination of frontier outpost and gentrifying small town.
Before it was Freed's, it was a saloon, so we used to dig down in that dirt floor and dig up bottles all the time. There was all these cool bottles.
Beginning in 1845, prominent citizens founded churches. First Weldon Methodist, then during the Civil War, Grace Episcopal and Weldon Baptist.
Almost everyone was involved in forming a church out of where one didn't exist before. And there were a number of churches that formed, and some are still here. The churches played just a critical role in the development of the business community and the progress that was made in Weldon.
Weldon evolved from a frontier settlement into a vital hub of commerce and transportation, marking a significant chapter in its enduring story. Because of its strategic importance, Weldon was robustly defended during the Civil War and never fell to Union forces. The end of the Civil War marked a period of significant economic struggle, widespread migration, and profound social change.
The Allies, they had a plantation of over 1,000 acres and unfortunately about 100 slaves. And then, of course, after the Civil War, that all ended. They started coming to Weldon.
Seeking employment on the railroad or in town, African Americans began coming to Weldon too. William David Smith, an enterprising young black man, arrived seeking opportunity and found work with Rufus Daniel in his store. The census of 1870 shows David Smith living in the household of Rufus and Narcissa Daniel, with son Walter and daughter Betty.
Walter went to Wake Forest, then he went to law school, and he became a lawyer, and then he became a state senator.
As business flourished, Rufus increasingly relied upon David's skills and reliability. Having learned to read and write, David capably managed the store, supervised inventory, and efficiently handled responsibilities. Narcissa Daniel helped found the Weldon Baptist Church in 1865. African-American residents established key congregations, including First Baptist Church in 1866, St. Matthew's AME in 1871, and St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church in 1883.
Slavery had not been too long ended, but these people, they wanted something, and Weldon afforded them that. You know, it was the railroad and the river, and so they were able to get work and finance the building of the church.
Freedmen began to carve out a spot in the town's commercial and civic life, helping to reshape Weldon's future in the aftermath of emancipation.
I'm sure that the founding fathers of St. Peter's and the others, they had no idea of the legacy that they were starting.
This legacy included a thriving merchant class that had long shaped Weldon's economic life.
Death of R.W. Daniel. He came to Weldon to live in 1853 at the age of 26 years, and 4 years later, 1857, began business for himself, which he continued with increasing prosperity to the day of his death. One of the oldest citizens of the place, he was respected by all, and his death removes a landmark which will not be soon forgotten. The Roanoke News, September 27, 1888.
As the original founders began to pass on, their businesses gradually transitioned to a new generation, one that included newly freed African Americans. David purchased and expanded the business, quickly establishing himself as a respected and influential figure within Weldon.
David Smith is not only one of the wealthiest men of his race in the state, but he has an eye to business and is one of the more progressive. The Roanoke News of October 1st, 1896.
Like other businessmen in town, David became a leader in the consumer economy that came to characterize Weldon in the second half of the 19th century, and that distinguished it from other southern towns.
By the 1890s, Weldon was growing quite a bit.
Every 15 minutes, a train would come through, be it a freight train or a passenger train.
At least 4 passenger trains would stop in Weldon. A lot of people getting off and on, and yeah, that was just the way people traveled in those days. Some of the cars were pretty nice too. I mean,
the train station was a double-decker. The Atlantic coastline was raised up real high. Right down next to the train station was the Weldon Hotel, which was a 3-story hotel. It was on 1st Street. I grew up with trains. I've got a picture taken in 1909 of Williams Gin and Bar running for president doing a whistle stop in Weldon, and my grandfather is standing on the back of the train with him, and he introduced him.
My mother-in-law said she liked to come to Weldon and spend the weekend with Miss Seifert, her aunt, because she liked dating the boys and dancing with them in Weldon. She married a conductor on the Seaboard Railroad.
We had lots of family on the railroad and lots of losses from jobs on the railroad.
Well, T.F., he worked for the railroad. He was the manager of the railroad at Weldon. He was killed in the railroad yard. He was run over by a train.
My great-grandmother, she became a single mother very early on in life when her husband died on the railroad. Her brother and sister helped her build the house, which is 401 Elm Street, and she turned it into a boarding house to make her way with 3 small children.
The coming of the railroad marked a turning point for Weldon, bringing with it opportunity, hardship, and transformation. Its tracks not only carried goods and people, but also reshaped the town's identity, leaving a legacy still felt today.